Hello, everyone.
Okay, over to you.
Hello, everyone. Nice to have you with us today. This is my first webinar, so I really apologize if it's not quite the way it usually works. I'm much more comfortable in a conference setting where I can see people and interact with people. But obviously, because of the terrible situation of COVID-19 at the moment, then I'm just wanting to reach out to people in any format that I can. But I'm very grateful to have everyone with us today, because it took me 2 years to write the book, and just after it was publicized, then we were all in lockdown. So all the planning, I had to advertise it, and all the conferences one by one got cancelled. So I'm very grateful to Celebrating Disability and Essie for giving me this opportunity, and I just hope that there's something that you all grab from it. But I do want it to be a flowing conversation, and I do want you to feel completely comfortable to ask any questions, even if usually you wouldn't, because maybe they're not that politically correct. In this situation, everything is fine. I don't know, obviously, how much you know about the book, but basically I have 2 nephews and 2 nieces and 1 goddaughter of varying ages, but they're all children. And I obviously over the years have spent a lot of time with them, and I came to the realization how important language was and what an impact it had. And I think really, if I'm honest, I probably came to that realization years before they were around, but I didn't realize it quite as much as I now do. So basically, 7 questions as a book is a little bit about my life and a little bit about my career and a lot about language and the history of language and the development of language and where it's come from and why it's still how it is and how strongly I feel that the language needs to move forward. Before I go more into the book, I do want to explain a little bit about my career background. 2 years ago, well, 2.5 years ago actually, I moved to Hove, which is near Brighton. But before that, I was working in Surrey, and I was working with young people, teenagers and elderly people to help set up care packages. So I was involved in all sorts of different walks of life and different backgrounds and different reasons why they were in their situation. And as a job, it was quite rich in experience. So I talk about that a lot in the book. So the reason why I'm saying that is because I don't want to come across as if it's one view. The book talks about several views, and then the 7 questions which you can see on the screen are the questions that I asked myself whilst I was doing my job, and then through writing the book I tweaked them a lot more through the conversations with my nephews and young people. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that it comes from every angle, from every walk of life, from every scenario, and I've tried to make the book so that it's not biased. But yeah, through setting up the different packages, it opened my eyes, because obviously I know how I want, I hate saying this, but I know how I want my own care to be set up. And I know my preferences, and I know my wishes, and I know my desires and dreams and all of that. But just because I know my own ones doesn't mean I know the clients I was working with. And so they woke me up to new ideas, and they took me on a journey that I hadn't even thought of before. So it expanded I don't know how to word it, expanded the different options that were available, and therefore like made me think outside of the box more organically. I mean, as disabled people, I think we do think outside of the box anyway, because obviously I don't know if you can see it, but I'm a wheelchair user and I have cerebral palsy, so I've been disabled from day dot. So I think we automatically think outside the box because we have to, because we can't just go and do something as naturally as someone who was able-bodied. But through my job, they took it even further. And basically, the idea of the book is to say it's fine the way you're doing everything how it is, if that fits for you. But does it fit for you because that's the way you've always done it? Or would another option be better? And it's the same with the language. It's like my hatred these days is the word care. I personally, it makes my blood crawl. And I just find it really, really grating. Like, I'm trying not to be rude as I try and describe how much I hate that word. But
Well, we're all
yeah,
at it.
I just despise it. And the reason is because in the Care Act, it actually states that the word care is someone who's a family member providing care, or indeed it can be used for someone who's providing care for a child, because obviously a child needs to be cared for, and a family member, if they're doing the care for someone, they do care. But it's not a generic word, but for some reason it's become one, and it really annoys me, because the Care Act is actually a really solid document that lays things out, like how they should be done to make the individual feel stronger. But for some reason, it often gets ignored. So I don't have any understanding why care agencies use it as a blanket terminology, because if you look at what it's supposed to represent, then it really means that we should be able to have free care, because it comes from family members, or anything other than what it actually comes from, if that makes sense. And I just think that the word care means also that there's something wrong with you medically, or you're ill, or you need protecting, or you can't manage because you're weak or whatever. Or the word care in hospital, for example, to me that makes sense, because you are being cared for in hospital because you've just had surgery, or you need a treatment, or you're recovering from something. I mean, one conversation I remember vividly, which started me on this road of 7 questions, which then led me to the book. One of my nephews said, when the agency called up to sort out my care package, he said, "But you don't need care. You're not sick. You're not in hospital. And why are they saying care? That's wrong. Is there something you haven't told me?" And he got like really, really emotional, because he thought I was ill, and he thought that I'd kept it from him. And I then had to spend ages explaining that no, I haven't kept anything from him. I'm fine. It's just the terminology they used. And within 2 seconds of my reply, he came back to me and said, "Well, it's the wrong terminology." And I couldn't agree more. He was spot on. And then that very evening at 1:00 in the morning, I woke up, like really inappropriate timing, obviously, but I woke up with the whole first concept of 7 questions. And now obviously 2 years on, it's a book available on Amazon, and it's being reviewed by several people. And before lockdown I was doing conferences, so he was clearly onto something. But also I think it's more than that, Because if you take away the words that put people down and replace it with stronger meaning words and, you know, empowering words and inclusion words and all those kind of things, then you're setting an individual on any age path. I'm sure I could have worded that better, but you're setting them on the right route rather than the wrong one. So a young child starts off strong and stays strong and then knows their own identity. But the moment you put the word care there, it slips back down again, if that makes sense. And so even though it seems like a very small concept, I think through reading the book and looking at the case studies that I've put in there and the testimonial that's also at the end of the book, that someone purposely took away the word care and took away the word support and took away the word, you know, handicap, which obviously I know in England we don't use it anymore, but in America they still do. And the word handicap actually means cap in hand, so begging, and obviously that puts someone down straight away. And you know, I just really feel strongly that language used in the right way is really powerful and really worth having and really quite beautiful and supporting and amazing. But used in the wrong way, it can be complete opposite and, you know, make someone more disabled than they actually are. And I said in the book as well, and I think that's important to mention, this is my own journey. But what I'm hoping is that everyone who reads the book, each page of the book gives them an opportunity to go on their own journey. So I'm not saying that my choice to not use the word care is the only one. If someone's completely happy with the word care, then it's the right word for them. But what I'm saying is I want to give people the opportunity to sit back and think to themselves, okay, is it the right word for me? Does it make me feel empowered? Does it make me feel in control? Does it make me feel like I'm still a child, or does it make me feel like the adult I actually am? If it does, then great, because that's your own journey and that's your own choice. And all I'm talking about is making sure, taking a breath, taking a sit back, and making sure it is your own choice. And it's not just being used in your vocabulary because it's a habit, because it's the words that we hear all the time on the news. I mean, especially at the moment with COVID-19, we're hearing the word vulnerable. And it's really frustrating me because I'm not vulnerable, but I am at high risk. You know, I've been in, as I say, captivity now for over 44 days. And by that, I literally mean completely. The only places I've gone is into my garden and just outside onto my pathway for the clap for the NHS. That's the only places, because I am high risk to the virus because of my own disability and my own health needs, but I'm not vulnerable. So I want them to take away the word vulnerable and just give the facts. And I guess that's what I want the book to do as well. I want the book to give the opportunity to give the facts. And like for another example, I'm dyslexic and severely dyslexic at that. And for years, I found it very hard to admit to myself and to other people. But actually, since I have been able to, the support I get given in the areas I need it is phenomenal, because I'm honest. I say I can do this, I am capable of doing this, I know the answer to do this, but I can't physically do it, and I need you to help me. And it's really empowering. And I feel like, you know, I feel like an adult. I feel in control of my own life, and I feel it's about owning it and saying, this is my path, not anybody else's. This is my oxygen. This is my choices. And if I want to use the word facilitation because I find it more strong, then that's what I'm going to do. And in the book, it just takes you through to find your own answers. Obviously, from writing the book, these are mine, but I do not want to put them on to anyone else. So, for example, I don't like the word support, and I talk about that again in a lot more detail in the book. But I find like prop up, like lean on, it to me, that still sounds weak, but somebody else might love it. And I worked with a client that liked the word enable, and I thought about that one for a while, but then decided it wasn't for me. And I think if we can all find our own language, our own way of navigating life, whether we have a disability or not, let's be honest, then we're just stronger people. And this is, for me, if I could get the book, to go as far as possible and help as many people as possible, then that's phenomenal. And, I have my nieces and nephews to thank for that. And, maybe, if I could get it into the Department of Health, then obviously that would be incredible. But that would be the ultimate wish. But the more people I can get to read it, to listen to it, to understand where I'm coming from, and to switch a mindset, I suppose, into owning everything around you, and not just, for want of a better phrase, your wheelchair or your clothes in your wardrobe, but who you are, then I think, everybody would realize that disability is a mindset, and it depends how you look at it, how you approach it, and what you decide to accept and then own it. Like, no matter how much I try to read, I'm never going to be able to. My reading level is 4 years old, and that's why Essie is helping me today by reading me your answers, because we'd be here for a very long time if she didn't, and you'd be bored stiff. So, but it's about saying, yeah, but if I get this piece of equipment or this person, like I got Essie involved today, then I can do it. And, we only need, 2 people and a working iPad, and we've now got you all involved, and that's great. But, I had to own the fact that I am dyslexic and I need that help. And the book just, hopefully my wish is that it takes organisations for businesses on a journey as well, and they work out how they want to approach employing disabled people, and they go on their own journey. So then it gives them more of a confidence to realise, actually, I can have these conversations with people, and I don't have to worry about being politically correct, because I can tell them I'm nervous, and it's okay to be nervous, because I feel that maybe, and this is going to be controversial, I know, I can feel people squirming already. I feel that maybe political correctness has gone a little bit crazy, and we need to just say, let's start talking. And, I'm hoping as well that people who have never been involved with disability will suddenly be involved, because the book will give them a confidence, and young parents of disabled people will know what kind of path they want to help their son or daughter go on, with permission to use different language than what we use at the moment. Because I don't know, but it took 4 young children to wake me up, but now I can't go back to sleep again. Essie, do you mind reading out the 7 questions for me?
Yeah, do you want me to read them out as 7, or do you want me to read them out one at a time?
Read them out as 7 to start off with, if that's okay.
Of course. So the first question is, What does your own identity mean to you? Second question is, how important is your own space, whether that be physically, mentally, or both? Third question, do you wish to be respected as an individual? 4, how have you or how might you manage any unwanted changes? I'll start that again. Question 4 is, how have you or how might you manage any unwanted changes in your life? Question 5, what is your understanding of political correctness and how it is being misused today? Question 6, what does the word care mean to you? And question 7, how much value do you place on your freedom of choice?
Now, I'd love to hear, like at the end of this presentation, what those questions brought up for you, and what other questions, if you were writing it down, would you add to it? Because obviously 7 questions is 7 questions, because that's the name of the book. But there would have been a lot more I could have added to it. But, you know, like this whole conversation could also go on for a lot longer. But just those questions in their own right at the end, I would really like to hear which one was the most poignant for you and why. And one thing that I would also like to add to that, and I talk about all of this in more detail in the book, so yeah, please don't think that this is a complete synopsis, because it's not. It's just a flavour. But one thing I would like to say is that each question, depending on what age you are, has a different answer. So, for example, like, what does my identity mean to me? Like, my identity as a young child would have been basically going out and having fun and having as many sweets as possible. My identity as a teenager would be getting away with as much as I possibly could without getting into trouble, and you know, having fun. My identity as a young adult the most important thing to me would have been, you know, looking cool, finding a boyfriend, and going to university. And now it's just basically knowing who I am and being okay with that. And, you know, recognizing what I'm good at and recognizing what I'm not so good at. But throughout each stage in everybody's lives, they have a different answer. So through the book as well, I get people to hopefully go backwards and forwards and think, okay, what would my answer be when I was young? What would my answer be when I was a teenager? And what would it be now, you know, I'm an adult? And I think that is really important, that people's wishes, desires, outcomes naturally change. So why wouldn't they change when you're disabled? You know, so the package that gets set up for you when you're little is not going to fit when you're an adult, because by then you might have a career, you might have children, you know, anything could be, couldn't it? Mm-hmm. So I think that these questions should be used when setting up care packages, and should be revisited and should be given to care agencies, for example, if it's not private support, and should be given to the people that you're interviewing if it is private support, you know. And it's just like, obviously add your own ones to it. This is literally just the starting point. You could scrap the whole 7 and put your own complete 7 in there, but it's just the thought process. And how empowered are you? You know, like, you might be physically disabled, but do you know how to cook a meal? Like, could you direct someone to know how to cook a meal? And if you can't direct someone how to cook a meal, then why not? Because you've still got the knowledge to be able to do it, even if you physically can't. And I think with people with learning difficulties, just to involve everyone, because that's what the book tries to do. As I said, I try and be as non-biased as possible. But even with someone with learning difficulties, you know, their capacity might not be the same, but there is a capacity. So if you break it down into a different format, for example, one example I give in the book is if you open the cupboard and there's loads of cereal in the cupboard, and you show someone with learning difficulties all the packets of cereal, they might not be able to decide which cereal they want because there's too much information in the cupboard. But if you take 3 packets of cereal out the cupboard and then say, which one do you want? They might say, actually, I don't want any of them. And then you can go back and get another 3. And they might say, I want that one. But the question was too big at the beginning. So it's about knowing the individual that you're working with and knowing their capabilities and giving them the best way to communicate. And it might take a bit longer, I respect that, but in the long time, it would save time and save energy and save emotion and create a more communicative platform, if that makes any sense at all. But yeah, I think that, you know, these are my 7 questions based on my career, based on my relationship with my nephews and my friends and everybody else I've come into contact. But, you know, like, there might be another load that are actually better, you know. And if you think there would be ones that are better also at the end of this, please do tell me, because I think that's important as well. And also if there's any other things that it's brought up, like emotions or memories, or, you know, like you've got a specific example connected to one of the questions, let me know that as well, because it's all helpful for when I'm doing conferences and trying to help organizations and companies be more approachable for disabled people. So the book itself is ready for a wide range of audiences, and that's basically what I want to get across. But the testimonial that's in the book, I will say this because it's one of the most beautiful testimonials I've ever read, and it's really worth reading, and it's worth reading in its own right without the rest of it. And you know, so are the case studies, and I didn't write them. You know, obviously they are examples of what happened, and the person who wrote the testimonial has a son with, I don't want to give too much away because the testimonial will tell you, but a son with very unexpected complex needs, and sadly she didn't get much support, and it's about her journey to find the support. And her son is now coming up to being a teenager, and he's amazing and he's brilliant. So when it came to a testimonial, it was very a pleasing one to receive, shall we say. And I think, like anyone, whether you work in the field or whether you don't, or whether you have a family member who's disabled, or you've just had a child who's disabled, or you're a business, like, I think we can all learn something from her testimonial, because she just kept going, and now her son has really achieved. And I just think it's brilliant because he achieved against all odds, and I love that. Essie, have you got any thoughts?
Well, there's a lot to go back over, but I've been trying to kind of think along the way, because I was thinking this question might be coming. So my thoughts are that, first of all, that I completely agree. I think it's so important to recognize individuality in disabled people. Just because we're disabled, and I also am physically disabled, I'm a wheelchair user, and I have cerebral palsy, but I can walk as well. And just because you're disabled doesn't mean that you don't have individual thoughts and individual wants and needs, and likes and dislikes. So, for example, we've known each other for years, and I love Robbie Williams, and you can't stand Robbie Williams.
No, I can't stand Robbie Williams.
Exactly.
It's true.
It's so important to recognise that just because we might have the same impairment and we may have some of the same experiences doesn't mean that we have completely different ideals and thoughts about what we want out of our life and how we would like to enjoy our days. So for me personally, for the word care, I also cannot stand, I hate the word care. And even before I understood why I hated the term, I hated the term. So a little bit like what you were saying before, it just always made me feel as though somebody was doing for me and I was losing my own autonomy and my own choice about how to autonomy and choice. But losing my own autonomy about how things were going to happen and what was going to happen. So for me, I prefer the term personal assistant because it's very clear that somebody is assisting me to do what I want to do myself. I also second what you were saying about people change. So especially from childhood to adulthood, isn't that obvious? But just because, even in adulthood, just because when you're 20 you like certain things a certain way doesn't mean that you like that when you're 40. So from a personal point of view, I used to like going out drinking, going to the pub. It's a good job I don't like that anymore. But I used to like going out a lot, not being at home very much, coming back late, and being very spontaneous with what I was doing. Now I would say, kind of in my late 30s, it is the complete reverse. I like doing things in the day so that I can be at home at night to watch my
I hear you.
and I don't like, I'd rather have a nice drink with my friend than be in the pub till all hours, because I don't see the point in spending money when I can, have comfort of my own home. I run Celebrating Disability. It's my business. And when I talk to business owners about the importance of returning to the conversation about workplace or reasonable adjustments, it's exactly the point that you were making, that just because you don't need something today, or you need something in a certain way today, doesn't mean it's going to be the same in 6 months, 12 months, 2 years time. So it's so important to return to that conversation, to double check that actually what the person wants is still what the person wants. And in this situation, I think it's so important. People coming into having a direct payment or a personal health budget for the first time, they might not know what they need. They may not understand how important their own physical space is to them. But after a year of having that support or that help, or whichever term you want to use, they think, oh, you know what, I actually like this person around, or I want a break from this person. So having that review and saying to that person, okay, what's changed in the last 12 months? How are you finding having somebody supporting you, helping you, facilitating? What is it that, is there something that's changed for you that wasn't the same a year ago? It's so important to keep that level of communication open, so that actually it doesn't matter whether there's a review coming up or not, but that individual knows that they can contact somebody at any time and say, well, actually, there's been a change. It's a slight change, but I've decided I want to do it like this now.
Yeah, exactly. And also, just to back that up and add to it, really, I completely agree with absolutely everything you've just said. But also from another point of view, if a person is given the space to be able to be honest with social services and say, look, this is the package I thought I need, but now I'm actually living the experience and I've realised it isn't. It might not always be an increase to the package. It might actually be a decrease to the package. Absolutely. Which means that because the communication has been opened by the 7 questions or whatever it might be, then social services or whatever the funding stream is has actually ended up saving money because they have realised the individual, we don't know the scenario. There's 1,000 scenarios out there, but whatever the scenario is, the individual has actually realised that, they can be happier with less support, maybe. And it wouldn't happen if the conversation wasn't there.
Well, so, I think that's totally my position. So I used to have 24-hour live-in care. And very recently, I would say in the last 3 years, I have come to the realization that actually I don't need to rely on other people to do it for me. There are ways, I still need support, but there are ways that I can find around having that level of support. And I would say as a result, I'm a much happier person. But that would never have happened if I wasn't given the room to find that out for myself and given support from the local authority to do so.
Exactly, yeah, totally. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today if I hadn't had all the jobs I've had before. I mean, honestly, hand on heart, and it's going to sound so cheesy, but quite frankly, I don't care. All the career chances I've had, has opened my mind so much that I'm more independent now than I ever thought I was going to be, ever. I thought I was really needy as an individual, and I thought there was no other way of doing anything. But I think as a disabled person, as I said earlier, or as I touched on earlier, we have a skill to adapt and to adjust things to make them work for us. And I think that 7 questions gives an opportunity for that to be celebrated, which I'm really proud of, and, I'm just so grateful for the chances I've had of people saying, Lorna, do you actually need that? Or if we set this up like this, maybe you can manage on your own, and I just think that's great, and this is why
I know sorry, Lorna, I know this is what you mean as well, but I do think there's a slight caveat to that that's important to note. As you know, and I'm sure a lot of people listening know as well, that independence doesn't mean doing it all by yourself. So
absolutely.
When we talk about independent living, it doesn't mean leaving the individual to it. It's about giving them the option to do it the way they want. So while it's great that everybody's saying to you, oh, Lorna, do you want to try doing it this way? Should we try and find a way for you to do it yourself? It's equally important for you to have that autonomy to say, no, I'd rather you help me do it.
Oh, definitely. For me, my dyslexia is a bigger disability than the cerebral palsy. So if somebody said to me, do you want to try and read it? The answer would straight away be no.
Yeah.
Because I would find that really upsetting. So it's not something I even want to be asked. So independence can be psychological as well. It doesn't have to be physical. And if you get my choice of words, you just said that your choice of words is PAs, and through going through the experience of all the conversations I had to write the book, my choice of words now is facilitator.
Yeah.
And if there's something I can't do, then by saying to an individual, I need facilitation in this, it completely changes in my mind the way they approach it, because they facilitate me, they don't do it for me. So, we're doing it together, we're working as a team, so we're both empowered. They know they're wanted to be around because I like having them around, because I've chosen them as my facilitators. And if I didn't like them, I wouldn't have done that. But they know that I need the help. So therefore, I'm not going to get, annoyed at the situation, because I recognize it. But psychologically, by doing that, I'm actually being more independent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's what the term independent living encompasses, having that choice and control over how and what is done and by who. Just on that note, Lorna, you asked me to give you a 5-minute warning. You've actually, because we got so carried away in our conversation, you've got a 3-minute warning before we do questions. And we have already.
No problem. I'm just going to have a quick peep at my notes, which are in the background, which hopefully no one can see. But I just want to check that I've covered everything. On the Smooth Wheels website, which is where all the stuff for 7 questions is, there is actually a podcast that me and Essie did in 2018. And if you play that back, I realised yesterday that I actually already used the word facilitation way before I did anything with regards to the book. So when I heard it back yesterday after all this time, it really did make me smile. And it might be worth listening to as well, because it also talks about the funding stream, access to work, and the good points and some of the not so good points about that, and how to make it work really well for you, just as a side note. Because it reminded me of a lot of stuff I'd forgotten about. So it might be helpful to the guys that are listening. Cool. But yeah, I think that's it. And if you found this interesting, as I said, the book goes into a lot more detail. There's a lot of individuals speaking within it, and there's I believe 11 reviews on Amazon at the moment, and hopefully there will be a few more. But yeah, I usually do conferences and things when we're not in lockdown. So if any businesses want me to come and do a talk, then I'm happy to do so. And thank you for coming today. It means a hell of a lot to me. The book comes from the heart, and so I'm really glad for any interest.
Brilliant. Okay, so before you do your final roundup, we have 3 questions from Rochelle, which is great. So I think one's a comment and 2 are questions. Oh no, I think 3 are questions. So we'll do the first one. I really agree with the approach of getting it right for individuals, and it's so important to know that. As an able-bodied person, how do I know what is the best terminology for each individual, so I know I am using the language that is empowering to the individual? Is it just best to ask? I guess this is particularly difficult in the workplace.
It's always best to just have a conversation. I mean, I appreciate that it's quite nerve-wracking to approach that conversation, but that conversation will be good for both parties, or all parties, depending on how many people. And then you know the answers, so you're never going to get it wrong. So it's also empowering, and then it enables everybody else to feel that they can ask you questions. So it opens up the flow, because even though you're able-bodied and not disabled, you might have preferences yourself of words that you don't like being used, you know, so it gives everybody a chance to be honest, and I think that's great. So yeah, even though it's hard to approach, definitely ask the questions, in my opinion anyway.
So the second part of Rosh's question, oh sorry, I've turned on the Essie's iPad camera. Oh no, I haven't, it's fine. Is about the workplace, and it goes into the first one as well. Can I answer this?
Yep.
Yep. So Rosh, the second half of Rosh's question, which goes into the third question, is how do you think that should be approached at work? Talking about the language. In order to write supportive policy, there will always be a terminology used which might not meet the individual's needs or wants. Is there a way to personally, effectively and thoughtfully, is there a way to personalize effectively and thoughtfully when considering how to support or facilitate people in the workplace? And the other question is how to have that support, you know, how to have that individual choice in the workplace. I think, you know, for me personally, this is what I do in my business. I support businesses to be inclusive of disabled people in the workplace. So I think for me, it's quite difficult. I think I always talk about the social model of disability and the language that is associated with the social model of disability. So to give you an example, I refer to myself as a disabled person because I feel that my disability is external. It's not internal to me. It's about what's going on in society that's stopping me from doing what I want to do. So as Lorna was saying before, however much she wants to be able to read a book, it doesn't matter how nice she is to that book, she's not going to be able to read the words on the page. And the same thing for things like ramps. And access and those kind of things. So I believe that other people prefer the terminology person with a disability because I want to put the individual first and then the disability second. I think as an individual, we make individual choices about what we want the terminology to be. But as an organisation and a business, I think it has to be an organisational decision. And I think one way to come to that decision is by understanding as an organisation what your values are towards disabled people. Because if you understand why you're being inclusive and you understand why you value disabled people and you want to include them in the workplace culture and in the recruitment and retention, then it's easier to get to the how. So if you decide that you want disabled people to be part of that workplace culture, and you decide that actually you're going to do everything as an organisation to mitigate the barriers that disabled people face on a daily basis, that may help you come to an understanding of what terminology you might want to use to represent disability. As far as the support is concerned, when offering kind of the help, the reasonable adjustments, the workplace adjustments in the workplace, I mean, we can have a whole webinar on this, and we are having a whole webinar on this next month if you would like to come. But as far as that's concerned, one element of that is the legal term in the Equality Act for a reasonable adjustment, an adjustment in the workplace to support disabled people to get what they need, is a reasonable adjustment. However, a lot of businesses choose to use a workplace adjustment because the term reasonable is misused as, oh, well, that's not reasonable and we're not going to put that in. So people are turning to the term workplace because then you take out the reasonable and realize it's all reasonable because it's to make an individual feel and be on equal footing to everybody else. So yes. I hope that, sorry?
I was just going to say that makes complete sense.
Oh, so I hope that answers a bit of your question, Rosh, but please kind of continue to ask a bit more. The other question Rochelle has asked is, I think the question that has the most impact on me is, what does the word care mean to you? This is because before hearing/reading your views on this, I didn't understand the consequences of what care means. But this is now, but this now means so much to me. The example I can refer to is a very good friend of mine once had someone throw out all her dried herbs because they were starting to go out of date. But my friend didn't mind that they were out of date and she was comfortable still using them. The, in quotes, carer thought she/he was doing the right thing and caring for my friend, but actually she/he was taking the choice away. If she/he saw herself as a facilitator, perhaps they would be facilitating my friend's needs by doing what they felt was right. That really impacted me, and I understood why it is so important not to take away individual choice/rights because it's what you think is right.
Yeah, and I think the word care gives more onus on the person providing the care to make more choice because they think they're caring.
Yeah.
But I personally believe that it's down to your family and your friends to do the caring.
Yeah.
You know, like that's where the care comes from. Care in the right concept, and I think this is very important to say as well. Care in the right way is a stunning word. It's beautiful. But I think for me, because it's been misused, in my view, and as I said, I really want to stress, this is only my view, because it's been misused, it's now a word that's now not used in the right concept. So I don't use it even when I say, like, I care for you, Essie, because you're my friend and we've known each other for years. I wouldn't necessarily use it because even in that sentence, it makes me feel funny.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's really sad. So yes, Rosh, I totally agree that I think if facilitation is used, it does make people stop and think. And I'm hoping that the whole book of 7 questions obviously makes people stop and think, because, you know, it's no one's fault that you know, we don't, because it's words and terminology that gets used every single day. So, you know, why would we stop and think about it? So like, I think it's just a chance to say, just because it gets used every day, does that mean it's right? You know, and I think the word facilitation, or in your case SCPAs, is better, you know, because you've chosen that. Yet you just haven't been told that that's what you're using. It's a conscious decision, you know, and it's between you and your PAs that you've decided that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm aware of time, Lorna. It's 53 minutes past. We have 1 question, 3 comments, although I haven't scrolled down, and 2 things in the chat box. So do you think we can get through all of them?
Okay, go for it. Go for it.
Let's go. So Kate asks, do you feel that you have learned even more about yourself since the lockdown? E.g., as I have had to scale back on my PA time, I have found ways of doing things myself that I thought I needed help with.
Absolutely. I mean, I think all these things are sent as a bit of a, I mean, I don't want to use COVID-19 as a gift because it's horrible, but and what it's doing to the world is horrible. But, you know, if we're thrown into situations, we have to cope, you know, and it shows us that we can. And definitely, like, each time I'm thrown into a situation, I realize that I'm more able than I thought I was. So yes, 100%.
Excellent. Okay, so Lynn says, not really a question, but think your point about starting a conversation is paramount. I see companies I work with tie themselves in knots about this, but too scared to ask and too scared to offend.
Never be too scared to ask, and always say sorry if I offend you at the beginning, and then you don't have to worry about it.
But also, I think if I agree with that completely, but I think if you're having that open dialogue, it becomes more obvious that it's not meant as offense, and it's meant to learn and to grow as a company and as a person. And I think, especially in organizations, and it's easier to do in organizations, if you can start that inclusion process from the start. So whilst thinking about your terminology and your language, you're also thinking about what makes people feel welcomed, why do they feel like they belong in this organization, then it becomes part of the systemic workings, and nobody feels as though the conversations are embarrassing, are awkward, or are offensive in any way.
Yeah, and I also, just to quickly add to that, I think that applies whether you're disabled or able-bodied.
Absolutely.
You know, everyone wants to be included. So, you know, like, a lot of this conversation doesn't have to be about disability, it's just in general.
Yeah,
you know.
Absolutely. Okay, so Lynn says, really interesting webinar, important subject matter, really well presented, and tech works perfectly. Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Lynn. I'm learning about
Thank you, Lynn.
every
Thank
time.
you very much.
Thank you. So Sarah says, active listening and open questions.
Thank you.
No, I think she means using active listening and open questions.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I think, yeah. Hopefully we did that.
Yeah, I think so. And I think more what Sarah means is not that we're doing a good job at active listening and asking open questions in this webinar, but it's all part of that conversation about developing.
Oh yes, I see. Yeah, I see. I completely missed that one. Yeah. No, I think, yeah, it is about it, you know. And the thing is, I think what's important to remember is we don't have all the answers, because we haven't walked in each individual's pathway. So how can we? You know,
Absolutely.
You know, how can you? Because you haven't led their life. You know, you've only led your own life. So, you know, it's okay to be, I want to use another word, but I can't think of one, but it's okay to be ignorant.
Yeah, as long as you're willing to, unless you're willing to acknowledge that you're ignorant and want to do something about it.
Yes, exactly. But you know, once you know the answers, you're no longer in that situation.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I'm going to move on. Rosh Sutton says, very well, very helpful. Thank you very much, Rosh. And
Thank you.
Claire says, sorry, I shouldn't have read the surname, says, I agree with regarding the word care. You care for sick people, and just because you're disabled doesn't mean you're sick or ill. Language either empowers or disempowers. I completely agree. I agree.
Yes, so do I.
I agree with you regarding political correctness. PC is non-disabled. PC is non-disabled people making decisions about how disabled people what to be. Sorry, I think I read that wrong. PC is non-disabled people making decisions about how disabled people want to be referred to, thus labeling them. Society feels the need to put people into neat little boxes. Completely agree. The 7 questions will be a good tool for people to access when thinking about employing PAs and the assistance they require. This webinar has brought back memories of what I was, of when I was a facilitator, specializing in language and the social model of disability.
Did you say that was Abby?
Yeah, that was Abby.
Yeah, thank you, Abby. I completely agree, and hopefully I want the book to be used in any format possible, and you know, I don't care where it goes as long as it's helpful. And yeah, thank you very much. I completely agree with every single point.
We just have one more comment on the chat from John. Just wanted to say thanks for the book. I enjoyed it and it made me think. Sadly, it also reinforced to me that the intention of the Care Act, whilst honourable, has not been met. Are you optimistic we'll move out of this and be nearer to a personalized world?
I would love that, and obviously that's my personal and professional goal. I mean, I'm hoping, like, because I actually think, like you said, John, that the Care Act it was supposed to be a helpful document. It was written from a good place, and if you read it, it is written really well, taking everything into account. So it's something that should be way more widely used and read and understood and respected. And I would hope that we can maybe revisit it and remind people, and maybe 7 questions can be something that helps towards that. But I have a lot of respect for the Care Act. I always have and I always will, but there's not enough knowledge that is out there and what's in it. And that's what I would like to change.
Yeah, I agree. So last comment, Rochelle says, thank you, very well delivered, interesting, insightful and helpful.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
So thank you so much, everybody, for coming along. You will see on this last slide both Lorna and my contact details, and the link to Lorna's book on Amazon. The Part of Me podcast link I put there is the podcast Lorna was talking about, where I interviewed her for my podcast Part of Me a couple of years ago. So it's well worth a listen, if I do say so myself. Thank you so much, everybody, again. After you leave this webinar today, you will be directed straight to a survey. I hope you don't mind taking a couple of minutes just filling it in. It will help me and Lorna to know how to, what we did well, and also me to know how to improve the webinars in the future. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a lovely
Thank you, everyone. Honestly, thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed the book. And please pass the book and this webinar on to anyone you wish to. Bye.
Bye.